The champagne was warm. Not the vintage, not the glass, me. Sitting at the head of the table in the Drake's Grand Ballroom, I felt the heat of 100 stairs prickling my neck like cheap static. The Riverfront Development Project was finally live. $1 billion win for Apex Architectural Group. My company. Or at least, it used to feel like mine until about 6 months ago when my wife, Evelyn Vance, decided she liked the view from my office better than the one from our penthouse on Lakeshore Drive. I swirled the lukewarm champagne, watching the tiny bubbles burst against the crystal. Across the table, Evelyn was laughing. That low, throaty sound she used to reserve for closing multi-million-dollar deals. Or for me, back when we were still playing house. Now, it was all for Julian Thorne, her personal secretary. The kid looked like he'd stepped out of a GQ spread, tailored Tom Ford suit, hair that probably cost more than my first car payment, and a smile that could sell sand in the Sahara. He was 26. I was 39. And tonight, he was the king of this particular hill. "Oh, Jules," Evelyn cooed, leaning so far across the table her diamond necklace, a Vance family heirloom, nearly dipped into her bisque. "You're being modest again. If it weren't for your late nights on the structural integrity reports, the Riverfront's East Wing would still be a pipe dream." Julian batted his eyes, playing the part of the humble prodigy. "Just doing my job, Evie. You know I'd move mountains for you." "Evie. Jesus." I kept my face neutral, my jaw loose. Loose enough to bite down on the urge to laugh. Or maybe to break something. Preferably Julian's nose. But I'd spent the last 2 decades building Apex from a 2-desk operation in a Pilsen storefront to a name that made developers on the Gold Coast sit up straight. I knew how to play the long game. How to let the other guy overextend before you cut the wire. Evelyn picked up a jumbo shrimp from the silver tray between them. She peeled it slowly, deliberately, her French manicured fingers gliding over the slick shell. Then, with a flourish that drew a collective intake of breath from the nearby tables, she dabbed the shrimp with her napkin and held it to Julian's lips. "Open up, superstar," she purred. Julian took the shrimp, his teeth grazing her fingertips just enough to make the point. The room didn't just go quiet, it went dead silent. You could hear the clink of silverware 3 tables over like it was happening inside my skull. Old man Henderson from the Chicago Merchants Association actually choked on his caviar. I saw him patting his chest, eyes wide, not sure if he was having a heart attack or just witnessing the social equivalent of a drive-by shooting. I caught Marcus Vance, Evelyn's cousin and the CFO of Vance Properties, giving me a look. Half pity, half amusement. The kind of look you give a man who just found out his wife's been sleeping with the pool boy, except the pool boy was currently eating shrimp off his wife's hand while wearing a watch that cost more than most people's annual salary. "Mr. Blake?" It was Sarah Chun, our VP of Operations, hovering near my elbow. Her voice was tight, professional, but I saw the concern in her eyes. She'd been with me since year 3. She knew the score. "Do you need anything? Water?" I shook my head, offering her a thin smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm good, Sarah. Just enjoying the show." I kept my tone light, conversational, like we were discussing the weather instead of my public emasculation. Then Evelyn did something that even made Julian blink. She reached over with a fresh napkin, linen, monogrammed with the Vance crest, and wiped a non-existent crumb from the corner of Julian's mouth. "There," she whispered, loud enough for the front row of this circus to hear. "Perfect." Julian grinned, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place. Which, by the looks of it, he might as well have. Evelyn turned her attention back to the room, her gaze sweeping past me like I was part of the furniture. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice cutting through the tension like a freshly sharpened blade. "Before we continue with the formalities, I'd like to take a moment to recognize someone without whom this evening, and indeed, this project, would not have been possible." She paused for effect. The kind of dramatic pause that made you want to check your watch just to see if time had actually stopped. "Julian Thorne, my right hand, my confidant, the architect of our success." She gestured to Marcus, who scurried forward with a small velvet box. Evelyn flipped it open to reveal a platinum Rolex, the same model I'd been eyeing for our 10th anniversary next month. "For your exceptional service to Apex and to the Vance legacy. Consider this a token of my deepest appreciation." The applause was hesitant at first, polite. Then it grew, swelling into a wave of noise that felt less like celebration and more like a collective nervous tic. Julian stood, accepting the watch with a bow that was just shy of mocking. He shot me a glance, quick, sly, the kind of look a rat gives a cornered cat, before slipping the watch onto his wrist. I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers. Inside, the temperature was dropping. Not the room, me. My pulse slowed. My vision sharpened. I'd seen this play before. In boardrooms, in negotiations, in the grimy back alleys of Chicago politics where deals were made on handshakes and broken on a dime. Evelyn thought she was writing the ending. She thought she'd backed me into a corner where the only options were humiliation or retreat. She was wrong. I pulled out my phone, the screen's blue glow hidden under the tablecloth. A single text thread. One contact, Victoria Sterling. The message was short. 3 words. Showtime V. I hit send and set the phone down. The weight of it, solid, expensive, a gift from Evelyn on our wedding day, felt different now. Like a chess piece I'd been holding in reserve while the board burned around me. Evelyn was still talking, her voice dripping with that syrupy sweetness she used when she wanted to gut someone professionally. And of course, we must thank Peter for providing the foundational platform upon which Julian could build. Every empire needs its foot soldiers, after all. Foot soldiers. I almost laughed out loud. Instead, I reached for my champagne flute and took a slow sip. Let it warm my throat. Let it settle the last of the adrenaline. I'd learned a long time ago that the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a smile, at the exact moment your enemy thinks they've won. Julian was preening now, showing off the watch to a cluster of junior associates near the dais. Evelyn was basking in the reflected glow, her hand resting possessively on his arm. They looked like the cover of Chicago Business Magazine. Young, dynamic, untouchable. I counted the seconds in my head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. The ballroom doors swung open with a resonant thud that echoed off the high ceilings. Every head turned, including mine. And there she was. Victoria Sterling didn't walk into a room. She arrived, tall, angular, dressed in a wine-red backless gown that probably cost more than Julian's new watch and my suit combined. Her dark hair was swept up in a chignon that showed off the sharp line of her jaw, and her eyes, cold, gray, and utterly devoid of sentiment, scanned the room until they landed on me. She didn't smile. She never smiled at these things. Smiling was for people who needed to be liked. Victoria Sterling needed to be feared. The murmur that had died down roared back to life. Victoria Sterling, the vice president of Sterling Capital. The woman who'd once bankrupted a rival firm just because their CEO wore white after Labor Day. The woman who'd told a U.S. senator to kindly fuck off during a regulatory hearing and walked away with a slap on the wrist and a 20% increase in her fund's valuation. She moved through the crowd like a shark through shallow water, parting bodies with nothing more than her presence. Her Louboutins clicked against the marble floor, each step deliberate, measured. When she reached our table, she didn't acknowledge Evelyn, didn't glance at Julian. Her gaze locked on mine. "Peter," she said. Her voice was low, smoky, the kind of voice that sounded like it belonged in a dimly lit speakeasy, negotiating the terms of a hostile takeover over a glass of bourbon. I stood, slowly, giving the room a chance to notice that while everyone else was staring at Victoria like she was a grenade with the pin pulled, I was smiling. Actually smiling. "Victoria," I said, extending a hand. Right on time. She ignored the hand. Instead, she leaned in, close enough that I caught the scent of her perfume, something expensive and sharp, like crushed violets and gunpowder. Close enough that her lips brushed the shell of my ear as she spoke. Her words meant only for me, but pitched just loud enough for the immediate vicinity to catch the gist. "Feed me, Peter," she murmured, the command wrapped in velvet and barbed wire. "Make it look real." I didn't hesitate. I picked up a shrimp from my own plate, still warm, thank God, and held it out to her. Victoria's eyes never left mine as she took it between her teeth, her lips grazing my fingertips with a deliberate slowness that sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. She chewed once, twice, then swallowed, her gaze sliding past me to Evelyn. "Delicious," she said, her voice carrying. But then, Peter always did know how to pick the best cuts. The silence this time was absolute. You could hear the ice melting in the champagne buckets. Evelyn's face had gone from porcelain pale to a mottled red that clashed horribly with her Valentino gown. Julian looked like he'd just been slapped with a wet fish. And Marcus Vance? Marcus was frantically checking his phone, probably trying to figure out if there was a way to delete the last 5 minutes from the internet. I turned back to the room, keeping my arm loosely draped around Victoria's waist. Possessive, intimate, the kind of casual dominance that said this was the power couple in the room, not the petulant wife and her boy toy secretary. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice steady, clear, cutting through the static. I believe my wife was just about to conclude her remarks regarding Mr. Thorne's contributions. I paused, letting the weight of the word wife hang in the air. But before she does, I'd like to make an announcement of my own. Evelyn opened her mouth, but I was already speaking over her. Effective immediately, I am filing for divorce from Evelyn Vance Blake. The dissolution of our marriage will be handled privately, but rest assured, Apex Architectural Group remains under my sole leadership. Any attempts to the contrary will be met with the full force of Sterling Capital's legal and financial resources. I felt Victoria shift against me, a subtle nod of approval. Evelyn surged to her feet, her chair screeching against the floor. "You can't do this, Peter. Do you have any idea what this will do to the Series B funding? To the Riverfront project? You'll ruin everything." "No, Evelyn," I said, my voice dropping to a register that brooked no argument. "You ruined it. The moment you decided to play house with the help and forget where your bread was buttered." Speaking of butter, I glanced at Victoria. "Victoria, perhaps you'd like to clarify Sterling Capital's position on Apex's future?" Victoria stepped forward, disentangling herself from me with a grace that made it look like I was the one being dismissed. She faced the crowd, her posture radiating icy authority. "Sterling Capital is pleased to announce a $150 million Series B infusion into Apex Architectural Group," she said, her words crisp, final. "In exchange, we will be taking a significant equity stake and 2 seats on the board, effective immediately. Furthermore, we've conducted a thorough internal audit over the past week, quietly, of course, and have identified several redundancies in the current management structure." She pulled a folded sheet of paper from the clutch tucked under her arm and tossed it onto the table in front of Evelyn. It fluttered down like a guillotine blade. "The list of terminations is attached. Mr. Thorne's employment, along with several other individuals whose loyalties appear to lie elsewhere, concludes at the end of this fiscal quarter. Security will be escorting them from the premises tomorrow morning. Gentlemen, ladies, enjoy the rest of your evening." With that, she turned on her heel and walked out, not waiting for a response. I followed, pausing only to glance back at Evelyn, who was staring at the termination list with the kind of horror usually reserved for stock market crashes. Julian looked like he was about to vomit into the bisque. As I stepped out into the cool night air of the Drake's portico, Victoria was waiting by a sleek Blacktown car. She lit a cigarette, illegal indoors, but Victoria Sterling didn't ask for permission and exhaled a plume of smoke into the Chicago dusk. "You hesitated on the shrimp," she said without preamble. I was savoring the moment. "Don't savor. Strike." She flicked ash onto the pavement. "Your mother's going to hate this dress, by the way. Too much back." I leaned against the car, watching the first stars prick the indigo sky. "My mother's going to hate a lot of things about tonight. Starting with the fact that I didn't tell her I was bringing you." "Good. Keeps her sharp." Victoria opened the car door. "Get in. We're not done. Arthur Vance just walked into the hotel with Margaret. And Julian's not the only rat in this nest." I slid into the leather seat beside her, the door clicking shut with a solid thunk that sounded like a cell door locking. As the car pulled away from the curb, I caught one last glimpse of the Drake's grand entrance, and the figure of Arthur Vance, Evelyn's father, striding through the revolving doors with my mother trailing behind him like a ghost in a sensible coat. The feast wasn't over. It was just beginning. The town car hadn't even cleared the Drake's circular drive before Victoria jabbed a manicured nail at the privacy screen button. The glass hummed up, sealing us in a cocoon of leather-scented silence. She didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead, her jaw working like she was chewing on broken glass. "You let it go on too long in there," she said, her voice a low rasp. "The shrimp thing. With Julian. You should have shut it down before she fed him. Makes you look like a cuckold, Peter. Markets hate weakness. So do I." I leaned my head back against the headrest, the leather cool against my neck. If I'd shut it down, it's a scene. I let it run. It's her pathology on display. Big difference. Besides, I was waiting for you. She snorted, a harsh, unladylike sound. Waiting for me to clean up your mess? Please. I'm here because your mother called me 3 weeks ago. Said you were too damn proud to see the knife Evelyn was twisting in your back. She was right. That got my attention. I turned to look at her. Victoria Sterling didn't do favors. She did transactions. What did my mother tell you? Enough. She finally looked at me, her gray eyes like chips of flint. She told me about the deal she made with Arthur Vance 21 years ago. The one that bought your first office in Pilsen. The one that put her in a state prison jumpsuit so Arthur could keep his shiny towers on Michigan Avenue. You think Evelyn's little performance tonight was just about humiliating you? It's about erasing the debt. Making sure nobody remembers that the Vances owe the Blakes everything. The car hit a pothole, jostling us. I clenched my fist, the memory of my mother's letters, smuggled out of Dwight Correctional, smelling of industrial soap and regret, suddenly sharp in my mind. Arthur knows this. Why is he letting his daughter act like a spoiled brat at a billion-dollar launch? Because Arthur's old, and Evelyn's been whispering in his ear that you're not one of them. That your vision for Apex is too blue-collar. Julian's been feeding her numbers, making it look like your projects are bleeding cash. Marcus isn't on it. They want you out so they can strip the assets and fold Apex into Vance Properties. She paused, pulling a slim silver case from her clutch, extracting a thin cigarillo. Or they did. Past tense. Because we're about to change the narrative. She didn't offer me one. Lit it herself with a gold lighter, the flame briefly illuminating the hard planes of her face. Here's the play. We go back in there. You announced the divorce. I announced Sterling Capital's $150 million injection. We frame it as you taking back control, not her pushing you out. We use the audit I've been running for the last 10 days, quietly, through a third party, to gut her people, starting with Julian. And we do it now, before Arthur can get her under control. I processed it. Fast. The numbers worked. Sterling's name alone would stabilize the Series B. The audit was the kicker. I'd suspected Evelyn was cooking the books, moving funds to prop up Julian's pet projects, but I hadn't had the time or the leverage to prove it. Victoria had handed me both. Why? I asked again. Why risk your capital and your reputation on a family squabble? She blew a stream of smoke toward the ceiling. Because Arthur Vance owes your mother. And your mother asked me to look after you. But more importantly, because Adrian Blackwood is circling Apex like a vulture. He's been sniffing around Julian for months. If Blackwood gets his hands on your riverfront contracts, he doesn't just win Chicago. He cripples every mid-sized firm between here and Milwaukee. Sterling Capital doesn't tolerate outside scavengers, especially not ones with Blackwood's pedigree. This isn't charity, Peter. It's a strategic purge. The car slowed, pulling back toward the hotel's service entrance. Victoria knocked twice on the partition. We're going in the side door. No press. No fanfare. Just us. She turned to me, stubbing out the cigarillo. You ready to stop being the fool at the feast and start being the host? I adjusted my cufflinks. The cold metal bit into my wrist. Good. Let's go feed the sharks. The service corridor smelled like bleach and lukewarm coffee. We emerged near the kitchen, the muffled roar of the ballroom hitting us like a physical wave. Victoria didn't hesitate, pushing through the swinging doors with the kind of authority that made a harried sous chef step aside without question. We didn't head for the main entrance. We headed for the small dais at the front of the room, the one Evelyn had been using as her personal stage. The crowd parted for Victoria. Not for me. For her. I was just the man walking in her shadow. Exactly as planned. Evelyn saw us coming. Her face, which had been a mask of brittle composure, cracked. Peter? What the hell? And you? Victoria Sterling. You weren't invited. Victoria ignored her, stepping up onto the dais. She didn't wait for a microphone. She didn't need one. Her voice carried, sharp and clear. Ladies and gentlemen, settle down. The entertainment isn't over. It's just changing acts. A ripple of unease went through the room. Julian, standing beside Evelyn, went pale. He took a half step back, like he could melt into the floral arrangements. Marcus Vance was suddenly very interested in his phone. I joined Victoria on the dais, turning to face the crowd. I didn't look at Evelyn. I looked at the sea of faces, investors, competitors, hangers-on, people who'd been betting on my downfall. Thank you, Victoria, I said, my voice steady. I believe my wife was just concluding her tribute to Mr. Thorne's administrative support. I let the word administrative hang there, dripping with implication. But before we move to the next course, I have an announcement. I paused, letting the silence stretch. Evelyn opened her mouth to interrupt, but Victoria shifted her weight, just slightly, and the movement screamed, "Don't even think about it." I am filing for divorce from Evelyn Vance Blake. Effective immediately, I said. No drama, just a statement of fact. This is a private matter, and I'll thank the press not to speculate on the reasons. However, given the unusual circumstances of this evening's events, I will clarify one thing. Apex Architectural Group is my company. Founded by me, built by me, and led by me. Any suggestion otherwise is not only incorrect, it's actionable. Evelyn found her voice, shrill and cracking. You can't do this, Peter. Do you have any idea what this will do to the series be closing next week? To the Riverfront project? You're going to tank the valuation. You're destroying everything we've built. We didn't build a goddamn thing. I shot back, finally looking at her. I built it. You decorated it. And you're currently in the process of looting it. I nodded to Victoria. Ms. Sterling will elaborate on the new financial realities. Victoria stepped forward, her smile thin and predatory. Sterling Capital has completed a comprehensive review of Apex's operational and financial health. Our findings are instructive. Based on those findings, we are pleased to announce a $150 million Series B equity infusion into Apex. This investment secures the Riverfront project's completion and provides ample liquidity for expansion. In return, Sterling Capital takes a 30% equity stake and 2 board seats, effective immediately. I will be occupying one of those seats. The room erupted, not in applause, in chaos. Reporters were shouting questions. Investors were yelling at their assistants. Evelyn looked like she'd been electrocuted. $150 million? You can't just. That changes the cap table. The voting rights. Peter, you're signing away the company. I'm securing it, I corrected her. From you and your friends. I pulled a folded document from my inner pocket. The audit summary Victoria's people had prepared. Furthermore, based on the audit, we've identified significant irregularities in personnel expenditures and project accounting. Effective at the close of business tomorrow, the following individuals will be terminated for cause. Julian Thorne, Director of Special Projects, Marcus Vance, CFO, and several members of the accounts receivable and procurement departments. I unfolded the list, holding it up. The paper rattled slightly in my hand, but my voice didn't waver. Security has already been notified. They will be escorted from the premises at 9 a.m. sharp. Their access to all systems has been revoked as of 5 minutes ago. Any attempts to access proprietary data will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Ms. Sterling's legal team will be handling the initial filings. Julian made a strangled sound. You can't. I have contracts. Evelyn, tell them. Evelyn didn't look at him. She was staring at the list, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. You planned this, she whispered, her eyes narrowing at me. You set me up. The whole shrimp thing. Victoria showing up. This was a setup. Setup? Victoria's laugh was cold. Darling, you handed us the rope. We just helped you tie the knot. Now, if you'll excuse us, Mr. Blake and I have a board call to prepare for. She turned to the room, her voice cutting through the din. The rest of you, enjoy the canapes. The bar remains open. Try the shrimp. It's excellent. Though I'd suggest using a fork from now on. She pivoted, grabbing my arm, and steered me off the dais. Behind us, I heard Marcus yelling about unlawful termination and Julian whimpering something about his reputation. Evelyn's voice rose above it all, a shriek of pure, undiluted rage. You'll pay for this, Peter. Both of you. I'll sue you into the gutter. I'll make sure you never work in this city again. We didn't break stride. We walked straight through the ballroom, through the stunned guests, through the whispers that followed us like a toxic cloud. Victoria didn't speak until we were back in the service corridor, the heavy doors swinging shut on the pandemonium. She released my arm, leaning against the wall, her expression unreadable. Not bad, she conceded. The looting line was a nice touch. A bit on the nose, but effective. It's the truth, I said, flexing my hand. My knuckles ached from clenching my fists. She's been moving money from the operating accounts to a shell company Marcus set up. I saw the transfers last month, but I couldn't prove where it was going. Your audit gave me the trail, which leads directly to Julian's offshore accounts, Victoria confirmed. And from there, to a consulting firm in Delaware that's a known Blackwood front. He's not just a pretty face and a willing bedmate, Peter. He's a corporate mole, and Evelyn's too blind with her own ego to see it. I felt a cold knot tighten in my gut. Blackwood. Adrian Blackwood. The name was a curse in certain circles. So it's not just about the Van Cess. It's about a takeover. Always has been, Victoria said, pushing off the wall. Evelyn's the pawn. Julian's the bishop. Marcus is the knight. And Arthur? Arthur is the king who's too busy counting his money to see his kingdom burning. But there's one piece missing from their board. Me, I said. And your mother, Victoria added quietly. Who, if I'm not mistaken, just arrived with Arthur. Through the front door this time. Security called my cell. They're heading to the private dining room off the lobby. We should join them. Before Evelyn finds a way to spin this into another sob story about how you're abusing her. I started walking, my strides long and quick. Victoria kept pace, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm on the tiled floor. What's Arthur doing here? I asked. He wasn't scheduled to attend. Your mother called him, Victoria said. After she called me, she told him what Evelyn was doing. Told him it was time to pay the debt. In person, with witnesses. We rounded the corner. The private dining room door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. A deep, familiar baritone, Arthur Vance, and a softer, steadier tone I hadn't heard in months. My mother, Margaret Blake. Victoria paused, her hand on the door handle. She looked at me, her gray eyes serious. Remember, Peter, this isn't just about winning. It's about making sure they never forget why you won. Arthur Vance values loyalty above all else. Remind him where his lies. She pushed the door open. Arthur Vance was standing by the fireplace, a tall, imposing figure in a custom Brioni suit. His hair was silver, his face craggy, but his eyes were sharp. And beside him, smaller, older, but with a spine of steel, stood my mother. She was wearing a simple navy blue dress and a cardigan, but she held herself like a queen. Evelyn was there too, standing near her father, her face streaked with mascara, her finger jabbing accusingly at me. And he humiliated me, in front of everyone. He brought her. She spat the word, jerking her chin at Victoria, and paraded her like some trophy. And then he fired Julian. Father, you have to do something. Arthur Vance didn't look at her. He looked at me, then at Victoria, then, finally, at my mother. His expression was unreadable, but his knuckles were white where he gripped a crystal tumbler of whiskey. Evelyn, he said, his voice a low rumble that silenced her instantly. Shut up. The room went still. Arthur took a step toward my mother. Then, without a word of preamble, he turned and backhanded Evelyn across the face. The crack of palm against cheek echoed like a gunshot. Evelyn stumbled back, crashing into a sideboard, sending a silver pitcher of water crashing to the floor. She stared at her father, hand pressed to her reddening cheek, her eyes wide with shock and terror. Arthur didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You dishonor this family, he said, each word precise and deadly. You dishonor the name I gave you. And you spit on the sacrifice of the woman who made everything you have possible. He turned to my mother, his shoulders stiff. Margaret, I apologize. For my daughter. For my own blindness. It ends now. My mother just looked at him, her face calm. It's not your apology I need, Arthur. It's your understanding. And Peter's peace. Arthur nodded once. Then he looked back at Evelyn, who was starting to whimper. Get up. We're leaving. And you. He pointed a thick finger at Julian, who had apparently followed us and was hovering in the doorway, looking like he wanted to crawl under the rug. You're finished. In this city, and anywhere else I have influence. Pack your things. Security will be by your apartment in the morning to collect the watch. And the files. All of them. Julian bolted. Arthur turned back to me. Peter, Apex is yours. Sterling's investment stance. I'll ensure the Series B closes without interference. But this, he gestured between me and my mother, this ends here. The debt is paid. In full. Do you understand? I looked at my mother. She gave me the barest nod. I understand, I said. But the debt was never yours to pay, Arthur. It was Evelyn's to respect. And she failed. Arthur's mouth tightened. He looked at Evelyn, who was still sprawled on the floor, crying silently. Then she'll learn. Come, Margaret. Let's leave these children to clean up their mess. He offered my mother his arm. She took it, her movements dignified. As they passed me, she paused, reaching out to squeeze my hand. Her grip was strong. Be smart, Peter. Not just angry, she whispered. Then she let Arthur lead her out, leaving Victoria, Evelyn, and me in the wreckage of the private dining room. Victoria walked over to the spilled water, nudging a shard of broken glass with the toe of her shoe. Well, she said, her tone dry. That was dramatic. Even for Chicago. She looked at Evelyn, who was struggling to her feet, her face a mask of hatred. I'd suggest a good divorce attorney, Evelyn. Someone discreet. I know a few. Though given the audit findings, you might find your access to the family funds limited. Evelyn lunged at me, her nails outstretched. You bastard. You and your whore mother. I hope you rot. I hope Blackwood buries you. Victoria intercepted her, grabbing her wrist with a grip that made Evelyn gasp. Careful, Victoria murmured, her voice like silk over sandpaper. Slander is actionable, and whore is a particularly unattractive word coming from a woman who just publicly fed shrimp to her husband's employee. Security is on its way. I suggest you compose yourself before they arrive. Your father's reputation won't survive another scene tonight. She released Evelyn, who stumbled back, breathing hard. Victoria turned to me, her expression all business. We need to talk. About Blackwood. Julian's run, but he's not gone. And he knows things. Things that could still hurt Apex if they get into the wrong hands. She glanced at Evelyn, who was slumped against the sideboard, defeated. Alone. Now. I followed her out, leaving Evelyn to the approaching security detail. As the door clicked shut behind us, Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her eyebrows lifting slightly. Speak of the devil, she muttered. She showed me the screen. A text from an unknown number. Enjoy the show, Sterling. The next act is mine. A.B. Adrian Blackwood. Victoria looked at me, her gray eyes cold and bright. Game's not over, Peter. It's just entered the second quarter. And Blackwood just tipped his hand. I felt the familiar chill of calculation settle over me. Then let's make sure he regrets dealing the cards. Victoria's lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. That's the spirit. Now, let's go find a quiet place to discuss how we're going to dismantle Mr. Blackwood's little empire. Peace. Bye. Peace. She started walking, her heels echoing in the empty hallway. I fell into step beside her, the sounds of Evelyn's muffled sobs fading behind us. The feast was over. The real war had just begun. The private dining room door clicked shut behind us, but Evelyn's sobs didn't fade fast enough. I could still hear her gasping for air, the sound thin and reedy, like a kid who'd just been told Santa wasn't real. Victoria didn't break stride. She marched down the hallway toward the service elevators, punching the button with a knuckle that had a fresh chip in the scarlet polish. Blackwood's already moving, she said, not looking at me. That text wasn't a boast. It was a probe. He's testing to see if we're rattled. We're not, I said. My voice sounded steady, which was more than I could say for my gut. It felt like I'd swallowed a handful of screws. Speak for yourself, Victoria muttered. The elevator doors groaned open. We stepped inside, and she hit the button for the executive lounge on the 37th floor. Your mother's downstairs with Arthur. Has been for the last hour. She didn't want to come up until the show was over. Said she'd seen enough of Evelyn's performances to last a lifetime. I leaned against the polished wood paneling, watching the floor numbers climb. How long have you known about the debt? The real one, not the money. 20 years. Give or take. Victoria pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages. Your mother told me the day I graduated from Wharton. Said if I ever forgot where I came from, I'd end up just like the Van Cess. Rich, entitled, and morally bankrupt. She was right. She glanced up, her gray eyes catching the fluorescent light. Arthur's not a bad man, Peter. He's a proud one. And pride makes you blind. He let Evelyn run Apex because he thought it was safer than letting you run Vance Properties. He figured a son-in-law was easier to control than a daughter with a trust fund and a grudge. He figured wrong. Damn right he did. The elevator chimed. We stepped out into the hushed silence of the executive lounge. A few suits looked up from their tablets, then quickly looked away. Nobody wanted Victoria Sterling's attention unless they were paying for it. We found my mother sitting in a leather armchair near the window, a cup of tea cooling on the saucer beside her. She wasn't alone. Arthur Vance was there, too, standing by the window with his back to us, staring out at the city lights. He turned as we approached, his face carved from granite. "Peter," my mother said. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the quiet. She stood, smoothing her cardigan. "You did well tonight. Though I wish you'd told me about Victoria sooner. I had to hear it from Marcus's secretary. Didn't want to worry you, Mom." "Worry?" She gave a dry, humorless laugh. "Peter, I spent 3 years in Dwight Correctional worrying about whether you were eating enough, sleeping enough, staying out of trouble. A little corporate intrigue? That's Tuesday." Arthur cleared his throat. "Margaret, perhaps we should." "No, Arthur." My mother's tone left no room for argument. She looked at me, then at Victoria, then back at Arthur. "It's time. He needs to know. All of it." Arthur's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He walked over to the bar, pouring himself a finger of scotch, though his hand was steady. 21 years ago, he began, his voice a low rumble. Vance Properties was building the Meridian Towers on the south side, corner of 35th and State. Shoddy concrete, cut corners, the usual shortcuts when you're trying to flip a property before the inspectors catch on. He took a sip of his drink. The West Wing collapsed during a storm. 3 workers killed, a dozen injured. OSHA was all over it. The DA was talking manslaughter charges. My name was on the permits. My signature was on the inspection reports. I was looking at 20 years, minimum. He paused, staring into his glass. Margaret was my bookkeeper then. Smartest woman I ever met with numbers. She saw the problem before I did. Saw the subcontractors' invoices, the falsified safety logs. She came to me, told me to fix it. I told her we didn't have the time or the money. So she fixed it herself. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. They were bloodshot, tired. She altered the records. Took the blame for the falsification. Pleaded guilty to criminal negligence to keep me out of prison. Spent 3 years in state custody so I could keep my company, my name, my freedom. The room went still. I could hear the hum of the HVAC, the distant drone of a plane overhead. 3 years. Dwight Correctional. My mother, who'd never even gotten a parking ticket, trading her freedom for Arthur Vance's empire. "Why?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. "Why would you do that?" My mother reached out, touching my arm. Her hand was warm, calloused. "Because Arthur gave you your first job, Peter. Sweeping floors at the Vance side office when you were 14. Because he believed in you when nobody else did. Because family, Real family, doesn't let each other drown. And because I knew you'd build something better than Vance Properties ever could. Something honest." "And the marriage?" I asked, looking at Arthur. "Was that part of the deal? A reward for services rendered?" Arthur flinched. "No. That was my idea. A way to bind our families. To make sure you'd inherit what was rightfully yours. I thought Evelyn would appreciate the stability. The history. I didn't realize she'd see it as a leash." He ran a hand over his face. "I was wrong. About a lot of things. Including Julian. Marcus told me he was a rising star. I should have checked his references. Should have listened to Margaret when she said he had shifty eyes. Julian's not a rising star," Victoria cut in. "He's a corporate saboteur. Blackwood's been grooming him for 18 months. Evelyn was just the unlocked door he needed to walk through. And Marcus? He's been skimming from the Riverfront escrow accounts for years. Julian helped him cover it up. They were planning to bleed Apex dry, sell the contracts to Blackwood, and pin the losses on you." Arthur's glass hit the bar with a thud. "Marcus did what?" "Check the ledgers," Victoria said, pulling out her phone. She tapped the screen, then turned it toward him. "Wire transfers to a shell company in the Caymans. Dated every Friday for the last 8 months. Right after the Riverfront drawdowns hit Apex's account. Julian's signatures on the authorization forms. Marcus approved them." Arthur stared at the screen, his face draining of color. Then he grabbed his own phone, stabbing at the screen. "Get me legal. Now. And freeze every account Marcus has access to. I want him in my office at 8 a.m. tomorrow. And if he's not there, I want a warrant for his arrest." He looked at me, his eyes hard. "I'll handle Marcus. And Evelyn. But Apex is yours. I'll sign over the shares first thing Monday. And I'll make sure the Series B closes without a hitch." "But Peter," he hesitated, his voice dropping. "Your mother's sacrifice isn't a weapon. Don't use it to destroy Evelyn. Destroy the system that let her think she could treat you like that." "I'm not interested in destruction, Arthur," I said. "I'm interested in restitution. And prevention." I looked at my mother. "You should have told me. Would you have listened?" She asked gently. "Or would you have charged in, guns blazing, and gotten yourself buried right alongside me. You were always too much like your father. Headstrong, stubborn, loyal to a fault. I needed you to build, Peter, not to fight my battles." Victoria snorted. "Well, he's fighting them now. And winning. Though we're not done. Blackwood's still out there, and he's got Julian's hard drive. Or at least, he thinks he does." She looked at me, a glint in her eye. "We need to find Julian before Blackwood does. Or before Julian decides to disappear permanently. He's got a flight booked to Zurich tomorrow morning. 9:45 a.m. Swiss Air. Business class. Seat 3A. I raised an eyebrow. "You've been busy." "I have a vested interest in not letting Blackwood win," she said. "Besides, Julian's predictable. He'll pack a bag, grab his laptop, and head to O'Hare. He won't expect us to be waiting." "Us?" my mother asked, frowning. "Peter, you're not going anywhere near that boy. Not after what he's done." "Mom, I need to hear it from him," I said. "I need to know who else he's talked to. What else he's promised. Victoria's good, but she's not inside his head." "He's not worth the risk," Arthur said, but there was less conviction in his voice now. "Let the police handle it." "The police are slow," Victoria said. "Blackwood's fast. And Julian's the only link between Evelyn's tantrums and Blackwood's buyout strategy. We lose him, we lose the evidence. And the SEC? They don't care about family feuds. They care about paper trails. Julian's the paper trail." She looked at me. "We leave in 20 minutes. My car's downstairs. Your mother stays here with Arthur. Somebody needs to make sure Evelyn doesn't burn down the Drake on her way out." My mother hesitated, then nodded. "Go. But be careful. And Peter?" She squeezed my hand. "Come back in one piece. I've already lost 3 years. I'm not losing you." I kissed her forehead, then turned to Arthur. "Thank you for telling me the truth." "Thank your mother," he said gruffly. "And Peter, don't let this make you bitter. Bitterness is a luxury for people who don't have responsibilities. You've got a company to run, a legacy to protect. Don't screw it up." "I won't," I said. Then I followed Victoria out of the lounge, back toward the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of my mother, sitting by the window, her silhouette sharp against the Chicago skyline. A ghost of the past, yes, but one that had just changed the future. The elevator dropped fast, the pressure popping in my ears. Victoria broke the silence. "You okay?" "No," I said honestly. "But I will be. Once Julian talks." "He'll talk," she said. "They always do. Especially when you've got a federal indictment hanging over their head and a one-way ticket to a Swiss prison if they don't cooperate." The elevator hit the ground floor. The doors slid open. "Let's go collect our mole." We stepped out into the cool night air. Victoria's town car was idling by the curb, the driver holding the door open. As we slid into the back seat, I looked up at the Drake, its windows glowing like eyes in the dark. Somewhere inside, Evelyn was packing her bags. Marcus was probably shredding documents, and Arthur was realizing that the empire he'd built on a foundation of secrets was starting to crack. But the cracks were letting in light, and for the first time in a long time, I could see clearly. Victoria tapped the partition. "O'Hare, Terminal 5. Step on it." The car pulled away from the curb, merging into the late-night traffic. I leaned back, closing my eyes. 21 years. 3 years in prison. A marriage built on a lie. A company nearly stolen out from under me. But the truth was out, and the reckoning had just begun. The town car was moving, but my hands weren't. They were shaking. Not the visible, dramatic tremor Evelyn had treated the ballroom to, but a deep, bone-level vibration that started in my sternum and radiated out through my fingertips. I jammed them between my knees, staring at the black leather upholstery. Victoria didn't say anything for a block. She just watched me from the corner of her eye, her own hands steady on the clutch resting in her lap. Then she reached over and poured 2 fingers of bourbon from the bottle stashed in the armrest. She shoved the tumbler at me. "Drink. You look like you're gonna puke." I took it, the glass cool against my palms. I knocked it back in one swallow. The burn hit my throat, then my gut, settling the shakes enough to get my voice working. 3 years, I said. The words felt rusty. "Dwight. For a concrete pour Arthur signed off on. 40 months. To be exact," Victoria said, her tone clinical. "Manslaughter, reckless endangerment, falsifying records." She pled down from involuntary manslaughter. Could have been 5 to 7 if it went to trial. Arthur's lawyers got it reduced to a Class 4 felony. She served 28 months before parole. Lost her voting rights for 5 years. Couldn't get a library card without a background check until you turned 18. I stared at the empty glass. My mother, Margaret Blake, who used to pack my lunch in a brown paper bag with a napkin folded into a swan, who stayed up until midnight helping me with algebra even after her double shifts at the Vance offices, who never, not once, mentioned a single word about a prison sentence. Why didn't she tell me? Pride. Same reason Arthur didn't. Same reason she made him swear to keep it quiet. Victoria took the glass back, refilling it. She wanted you to respect Arthur, not pity him, not see him as the guy who let his bookkeeper take the fall. And she didn't want you growing up thinking your mother was a felon. Wanted you to have a clean slate. Build your own name without that shadow. She built my name, I said, the bourbon igniting a slow fire in my chest. Every contract I signed, every brick I laid at Apex, it was on a foundation she paid for with 3 years of her life. And Evelyn. I trailed off, the name tasting like bile. Evelyn walks around in Valentino and Harry Winston, throws shrimp at a gigolo, and calls it appreciation. She wouldn't last 3 days in a county lockup. Hell, she couldn't even handle a slap from her old man without crumbling. Which is exactly why you don't destroy her, Victoria said, her gray eyes sharp in the dim light. You dismantle her. There's a difference. Destruction is emotional. Dismantling is systemic. Arthur's right about that. You torch Evelyn. The Vance name gets dragged through every tabloid in the Midwest. Your mother's sacrifice becomes a sidebar in a divorce scandal. That's not restitution. That's a fucking waste. I leaned my head back against the seat, closing my eyes. Images flashed behind my eyelids. Evelyn's smug smile as she handed Julian the Rolex. The way she'd brushed non-existent lint off his shoulder. The way she'd looked at me, or rather, through me, like I was part of the Silver Service. And underneath it all, the ghost of my mother's handwriting on the letters she'd sent from Dwight. Neat, precise, never a complaint. Stay in school, Peter. Eat your vegetables. I'm fine. The library here has good books. Fine, I said, opening my eyes. We dismantle her. We dismantle Marcus. We get Julian to talk. But Blackwood, I turned to look at Victoria. That text. He's not just watching. He's moving. What's the play? Victoria's mouth thinned. Blackwood's a parasite. He doesn't build. He hollows out. He finds companies with weak leadership, internal leaks, and liquidity problems. Then he moves in with a leveraged buyout, guts the assets, fires half the staff, and flips what's left for twice the price. Apex was a target the minute your Series A closed. Julian was his way in. Evelyn was his leverage. Marcus was his banker. How deep is it? I asked. The leak. Deep enough that Julian had access to the riverfront structural schematics, the environmental impact reports, and the private placement memorandum for the Series B, Victoria said. He's been feeding Blackwood's analysts for 6 months. They've got your profit projections, your contractor bids, even your contingency plans for the winter delays. Blackwood's not just trying to buy Apex. He's trying to replicate it. Undercut your bids on 3 other municipal contracts you've got lined up for next quarter. If he gets the riverfront, he locks down the South Shore development for the next decade. Prices out every small firm in the city, including yours, eventually. I processed that. 6 months. While I was sleeping next to Evelyn, Julian was in the guest room, uploading my company's future to a server in Delaware. The hard drive, the one you mentioned. Encrypted. Julian's paranoid. Uses a rotating cipher. But he's got the keys on him. Or he did, last I checked. Which is why we're going to O'Hare. He's not going to Zurich. That flight's a decoy. He's heading to Newark. Connecting to Geneva. Blackwood's got a private jet waiting there to take him to Dubai. Safe harbor. No extradition. Not if we get to him first, I said. No, Victoria agreed. Not if we get to him first. But Peter, she paused, her voice dropping. When we do, you let me handle the talking. Julian's scared, but he's also stupid. He'll try to lawyer up, or worse, try to bargain with information he doesn't actually have. We need the drive. And we need him to confirm the chain of custody. Who he gave what, when, and why. Without that, the SEC sees it as a disgruntled employee issue. With it, it's RICO. Conspiracy to commit securities fraud. Wire fraud. Interstate transport of stolen property. Enough to bury Blackwood's Chicago operation and put Julian in a federal pen for longer than your mom was in Dwight. The car slowed, merging onto the I-90 ramp toward O'Hare. The city lights blurred past the windows. I thought about my mother, sitting in that lounge with Arthur. The look on her face when she'd squeezed my hand. Come back in one piece. She'd already given up 3 years. I wasn't giving her another day of worry. We get the drive, I said. We get the names. Then we burn Blackwood's playbook. Publicly. At the next commercial club luncheon. Let the whole city see who's been picking their pockets. Victoria almost smiled. Almost. Now you're thinking like a man who owns his name, not one who rents it. But first, she tapped the driver's shoulder. We've got a rat to catch. The car exited the expressway, weaving through the pre-dawn traffic toward Terminal 5. Victoria pulled out her phone, tapping out a quick message. My guy at TSA says Julian just cleared security. He's at Gate K19, killing time in the United Club. He's got a roller bag and a backpack. The laptop's in the backpack. Probably the drive, too. He's traveling light. No entourage. No Marcus. Evelyn's nowhere near him. He's on his own. Then he's desperate, I said. Desperate men make mistakes. Exactly. Victoria slipped the phone back into her clutch. When we get inside, follow my lead. Don't touch him. Don't threaten him. Let him think we're here to negotiate. Let him think he's still got a choice. Then we take the choice away. The car pulled up to the departures curb. Victoria didn't wait for the driver. She was out the door before it fully stopped, her heels clicking on the pavement. I followed, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. We moved through the automatic doors, past the sleepy-eyed travelers and the scent of stale coffee and jet fuel. Terminal 5 was quieter this time of morning, mostly international flights and red ice. We bypassed the main security line, flashing credentials at a uniformed officer who nodded at Victoria and waved us through. Down the concourse, past the duty-free shops and the closed newsstands. Gate K19 was at the far end. I spotted Julian before he saw us. He was slouched in a leather chair near the window, nursing a coffee, his new Rolex glinting under the fluorescent lights. He looked tired, wired. His knee was bouncing a mile a minute. Victoria didn't slow down. She walked right up to him, stopping just inside his personal space. Julian, enjoying the lounge. The espresso's decent, but the Wi-Fi spotty. Julian's head snapped up. His eyes went wide, then narrowed. He set down his coffee, his hand drifting toward the backpack at his feet. Sterling. Blake. What the hell are you doing here? I've got a flight to catch. Geneva? Victoria tilted her head. Lovely this time of year. Assuming you make it past customs. Switzerland's funny about financial crimes. They'll extradite, you know. Eventually. After a few years of reviewing the paperwork. Julian's face paled. He licked his lips. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm on vacation. Personal time. Evelyn approved it. Evelyn's not approving your dry cleaning anymore, I said, stepping up beside Victoria. My voice was flat. Her father cut her off an hour ago. Marcus is currently explaining his accounting errors to Arthur's legal team. And you? I leaned down, getting in his face. You're not going to Dubai. You're going to a holding cell in the Dirksen Federal Building unless you start talking. Right. Now. Julian's hand clamped down on the backpack strap. You can't threaten me. I have rights. I'll call my lawyer. Your lawyer's on retainer to Vance Properties, Victoria said, her tone bored. Arthur Vance just fired him. Along with you. And the only call you'll be making is to your mother to tell her you won't be home for Christmas. Because the SEC has a very nice suite waiting for you in the Metropolitan Correctional Center. Minimum security, but the food's still terrible. She crouched down, bringing herself to his eye level. Here's the deal, Julian. You give us the hard drive. The one with all the Apex files you've been leaking to Adrian Blackwood. You give us the encryption keys, the contact list, the dates, the amounts. You tell us everything. And in return, I don't mention your name when I file the RICO complaint. I don't recommend the maximum sentence. I don't notify IC about your student visa irregularities from 2018. You cooperate, you get a reduced charge. Maybe even witness protection if you're really helpful. You don't. She stood up, straightening her dress. I personally make sure you spend the next decade sharing a cell with a guy named Tiny who hates corporate moles. Your choice. Julian stared at her, his breath coming in short gasps. He looked at me, then back at Victoria. His hand loosened on the backpack. She said, Evelyn said it was just due diligence. That Blackwood was just advising on the Series B. She said I was helping Apex. Evelyn lied, I said. She used you to steal from me. And when Blackwood's done with you, he'll drop you so fast your head will spin. You're a footnote in his playbook, Julian. A disposable asset, just like she was. He swallowed hard. His eyes darted around the gate area, but there was nowhere to run. TSA agents were subtly positioning themselves nearby, watching but not intervening. Victoria had this covered. She'd planned it down to the last detail. Slowly, trembling, Julian unzipped the backpack. He pulled out a silver laptop, then a small, encrypted external drive. He held it out, his hand shaking. It's all here. Everything. The riverfront specs, the bid sheets, the investor lists. Blackwood's strategy memo for the Q1 acquisitions. I just copied it. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt. Victoria took the drive, slipping it into her clutch. She didn't even glance at it. Too late for that. Your copying got 3 workers killed when Blackwood's cut-rate contractors botched the Meridian Towers retrofit last month. Or did Evelyn forget to mention that little detail? Julian went white. I didn't know about that. She said it was just structural assessments. Bullshit, I said. You knew. You just didn't care. As long as the checks cleared. 2 plainclothes FBI agents appeared beside us. Victoria nodded to them. Gentlemen, Mr. Thorne is ready to cooperate. Take him to the federal building. Room 1040. I'll be by later with the paperwork. As they cuffed Julian and led him away, he looked back at me, his eyes desperate. Blake, please, tell them I helped. Tell them I gave you the drive. I watched him go, feeling nothing. No satisfaction. No triumph. Just a vast, cold emptiness. Victoria touched my arm. Come on. We've got work to do. That drive needs decrypting, and Blackwood needs to know his little spy network just went dark. We walked back down the concourse, the first hints of dawn bleeding through the windows. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Heard. Be safe. Proud of you. I stared at the words, then typed back a single reply. Coming home soon. Victoria glanced at my screen. Good. You need sleep. And then we need to plan the next move. Because Blackwood's not going to take this lying down. He'll come at us harder now. But we've got the ammunition. And Peter, she looked at me, her expression unreadable. You just took your first real swing. Make sure the next one counts. I nodded, slipping the phone back into my pocket. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, I could see the enemy clearly. And I knew exactly where to aim. The executive lounge was deserted except for a sleep-deprived guy in a Bears hoodie hunched over a laptop near the window. Victoria ignored him, leading me to a secluded corner booth flanked by a potted ficus that looked like it had seen better decades. She didn't sit. She stood over the table, pulling the silver hard drive from her clutch and slotting it into a sleek, matte black decryption device I recognized from a DEF CON conference. Military grade, untraceable, the kind of hardware that didn't show up on Amazon. Turn around, she told the Bears fan without looking at him. Her tone wasn't loud, but it had the edge of a scalpel. The guy flinched, gathered his stuff, and beat it toward the elevators without a word. Victoria sat, booting up a carbon fiber laptop. The screen flared to life, bathing her face in a cold blue glow. Julian's good. Not great, but good. He used a triple-layered AES 256 encryption with a biometric key. Problem is, he's vain. Used his own birth date, his Harvard, Idaho number, and, get this, the model number of that Rolex Evelyn gave him. Amateur hour. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Blackwood should fire him for operational security this sloppy. Blackwood won't fire him, I said, sinking into the booth opposite her. My suit felt stiff with dried sweat and bourbon. He'll feed him to the SEC to save his own ass. That's what parasites do. True. The laptop emitted a soft chime. Victoria's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Drive's unlocked. Let's see what our little mole has been squirreling away. She navigated through a labyrinth of folders. Project Riverfront, Series B Optics, Vance Internal Audit, Personal Evelyn. She opened the last one, scrolling through a series of text files and audio recordings. Her expression didn't change, but her knuckles whitened on the trackpad. Well, look at this. She spun the laptop toward me. On the screen was a transcript of a conversation dated 3 weeks ago. JT, she's suspicious. Asked about the Zurich transfers again. AB, manage her. Evelyn's vanity is our greatest asset. Use the anniversary gift as leverage. I want the structural liability clause removed from the riverfront contracts by Friday. JT done. Marcus is moving the escrow funds tonight. For $0.2 million. Should cover the Q1 gaps. AB good. Once the liquidity crisis hits in February, we move on Apex. The board will beg us to bail them out. And Peter Blake? JT, yes? AB, leave him to me. I want him broken before I take his name off the letterhead. I read it twice. The words were cold, clinical, stripped of any pretense of humanity. Broken, I repeated. The word felt foreign in my mouth. He's not just after the company. He's after me. He's after the principal, Victoria corrected. She pulled the laptop back, opening a different folder labeled Target Acquisitions. Inside were detailed dossiers on 12 Chicago-based firms, including Apex. Each dossier contained financial statements, project timelines, and, most chillingly, personal vulnerabilities. My page was 5 pages long. It listed my mother's address, her parole officer's name, my habitual route to the office, even the fact that I had a mild shellfish allergy Evelyn used to joke about. Blackwood's a predator, Victoria said, her voice low. He doesn't just want your market share. He wants to erase you. Make an example. Show every other mid-tier firm in the Midwest what happens when they don't kneel to Sterling Capital's predecessors. She emphasized the last word with a sneer. His father, Richard Blackwood, tried the same play in the 80s. Got shut down by the CFTC. Adrian learned from it. He's more patient, more vicious. He uses people like Julian and Evelyn as scalpels, not sledgehammers. By the time you realize you're bleeding out, he's already bought the hospital. I leaned back, processing. The scale of it was bigger than I'd imagined. This wasn't a hostile takeover. It was a coordinated dismantling of an entire sector. What's the endgame? Beyond owning Chicago? Vertical integration, Victoria said. Control the construction firms. Control the materials suppliers. Control the permitting process via Marcus's connections. And then, she clicked to a final document. A draft press release dated 6 months out announced the merger of Blackwood Capital and Vance Properties under a new umbrella, Great Lakes Dominion. They'd effectively monopolize commercial development from Gary to Kenosha. Your riverfront project is the crown jewel because it includes a municipal bond component. Control the riverfront, you control the city's credit rating. Control the credit rating, you dictate where the pension funds invest. It's not just business, Peter. It's a power grab. I thought about my mother's 3 years in Dwight. About Arthur's guilt. About Evelyn's laughter as she fed Julian shrimp. It all traced back to this. One man's ambition to own the skyline. We stop him at the riverfront, I said. If we can prove he tampered with the contracts, manipulated the escrow, and used insider information to trigger the liquidity crisis, we can get the SEC to freeze his local assets. We can, Victoria agreed. But it won't be enough. Blackwood's got judges in his pocket, politicians on his payroll. He'll delay, appeal, and bury us in discovery motions until we're bankrupt. We need something sharper, something he can't buy his way out of. She paused, her gray eyes locking onto mine. We need to flip Julian. Publicly. Get him on camera, confessing to everything. Tie Blackwood directly to the espionage. Then we take it to the Tribune, the Wall Street Journal, CNBC. Drag his name through the mud until his European investors pull their funding. Kill the snake's head, not just its fangs. Julian won't do it, I said. He's facing RICO. He'll clam up, lawyer up, and wait for a plea deal. He will if we give him a reason, Victoria said. She pulled up another file, Julian's personal finances. Look at this. He's not just stealing for Blackwood. He's gambling. Online poker, offshore sportsbooks. He's down $800,000. Blackwood knows. He's been covering the debts in exchange for the leaks. But here's the kicker. She highlighted a recent transaction. Blackwood just stopped paying. Last night, at 11:47 p.m., he wired Julian's bookie directly, settling the debt. Julian's now clear in the eyes of the mob, but he's also burned the only bridge he had to Blackwood. He's a liability, and Blackwood disposes of liabilities. The pieces clicked. He's running because Blackwood's coming for him. Not to save him. To silence him. Exactly. Which means he's motivated. Scared men talk. Terrified men sing. Victoria closed the laptop. But we need to move fast. Blackwood's not stupid. He'll realize Julian's hard drive is missing within the hour. He'll send his own cleanup crew to Julian's apartment, then to O'Hare. We need to get to Julian at the federal building before Blackwood's lawyers do. And we need to convince him that the only way he survives this is by becoming our star witness. I stood up, the fatigue evaporating, replaced by a cold, clear focus. Let's go. My mother's at the Drake. I want her protected. Already handled, Victoria said, sliding the drive and the decryption device into her bag. I called in a favor from a former Marine I know. He's parked outside the Vance residence with 3 guys. Evelyn's not going anywhere, and neither is your mom. Arthur's at his office, lawyering up. We're clear to move. She stood, smoothing her dress. One more thing. Blackwood's not working alone. Marcus is the inside man, but there's a name in these files that keeps popping up. Someone with access to the municipal bond market. Someone who can stall the riverfront's funding indefinitely. She pulled out her phone, showing me a name buried in the metadata of one of Julian's audio files. Daniel Fitzpatrick, City Comptroller, the man who signed off on the riverfront's public financing. Son of a bitch, I muttered. Fitzpatrick had been at the victory party tonight, shaking my hand, congratulating me on the bold vision. All the while, he was likely feeding our bond schedules to Blackwood. He's the one slowing the draws. He's the one, Victoria confirmed. Blackwood's been leaning on him for months. Promised him a VP slot at Great Lakes Dominion. Fitzpatrick's the reason your contractors haven't been paid in 3 weeks. He's the reason the liquidity crisis is hitting now, right before the Series B close. He's the linchpin. I felt a surge of cold anger. Fitzpatrick wasn't just a corrupt official. He was the bottleneck. Remove him, and the riverfront's funding flows. Expose him, and Blackwood loses his leverage with the city. Can we tie him to Julian? Working on it, Victoria said, already typing on her phone. My tech guy is cross-referencing Fitzpatrick's bank records with Julian's transfers. If we find a match, we've got him. But Peter, she looked up, her expression grim. Fitzpatrick's got friends in Springfield. This goes beyond Chicago. This is state-level corruption. We expose him, we're not just fighting Blackwood. We're fighting the machine. Good, I said. Let them come. I've got nothing left to lose. And everything to take back. I thought of my mother, of Arthur's confession, of Evelyn's betrayal. Let's go see Julian. And then, we pay Mr. Fitzpatrick a visit he won't forget. Victoria's smile was a flash of white in the dim light. That's the spirit. Now, let's go remind Mr. Blackwood that in Chicago, we don't bury our rivals. We build over their graves. We left the lounge, the elevator doors closing on the empty space. As we descended toward the garage, Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her eyebrows lifting. Update from the Federal. Julian's singing like a canary. Already implicated Blackwood in the Meridian Towers retrofit. Seems he's more scared of Blackwood's cleanup crew than he is of prison. Get it on record, I said. Video, audio, everything. And make sure the U.S. Attorney's Office gets a copy before Blackwood's lawyers do. Already done, Victoria said. The elevator hit the garage level. The doors opened to the smell of oil and ozone. But Peter? One last thing. Your mother called again. Left a message. She handed me her phone. I pressed play. Peter, it's Mom. Arthur told me what you're doing. Going after Blackwood. I'm proud of you. But listen to me. Anger is a blunt instrument. It breaks things, including the person swinging it. Use your head. Use the truth. And come home when it's done. I'm making pot roast. The message ended. I handed the phone back, a lump in my throat. Pot roast, I repeated. She hasn't made that since. Since before Dwight, Victoria finished. She didn't look at me, just walked toward the town car idling near the exit. Means she expects you to win. Means she expects you home for dinner. Don't disappoint her. I followed her, the weight of my mother's words settling over me. Anger was easy. Revenge was satisfying. But coming home to pot roast? That was the real prize. And I'd be damned if I let Adrian Blackwood take it from me. We got into the car. Victoria tapped the partition. Dirksen Federal Building. Step on it. As we pulled into the pre-dawn traffic, I looked out at the Chicago skyline, the buildings etched against the paling sky. Somewhere out there, Blackwood was waking up, probably sipping espresso in a penthouse, thinking he'd won. He was about to learn the hard way that the Blakes didn't stay buried. Not now. Not ever. The rain started hammering the windshield somewhere around Ohio Street, turning the Gold Coast into a blur of smeared taillights and neon reflections. Victoria's driver killed the headlights a block away from Julian's building, coasting to a stop behind a parked delivery truck. No sense announcing ourselves to whatever surveillance Blackwood had on the street. He's on the 42nd floor, Victoria said, checking her Glock under the jacket of her gown. She looked completely unfazed by the fact that she was carrying a firearm in a wine-red couture dress. places a glass box. If he sees us coming, he'll bolt down the service stairs. We go in fast. No knocking. I checked the time on my phone. 4:17 a.m. Julian's flight was supposed to leave in 5 hours, but after seeing those files, I knew he wasn't waiting for a boarding call. He was running now. FBI clear? I asked. Agent Reyes is at the elevator bank downstairs. Her partner is on the roof in case he tries the helicopter pad. We've got the building locked down. It's just us and the rat. She pushed the door open, the rain instantly soaking the hem of her dress. Move. We didn't use the main lobby. Victoria led me through a soggy, trash-strewn alley to a side entrance where a uniformed cop was already holding the door. He didn't ask for IDs. He just nodded at Victoria like she owned the precinct. We took the service elevator, the cable groaning as we climbed. The silence between us was thick, broken only by the rhythmic thumping of the rain against the elevator shaft. Remember, Victoria said quietly as the elevator slowed, we need him coherent. Don't break his jaw yet. Wait until after he gives us the keys. I'm not here to break his jaw, I said, rolling my shoulders to loosen the tension. I'm here to take back my name. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse foyer. It was pitch black, but I could hear the frantic clicking of a keyboard coming from the living room. No lights, just the blue glow of a monitor. Julian was too busy wiping his digital tracks to notice the two shadows moving across his Italian marble floor. Victoria didn't hesitate. She crossed the room in 3 strides and slammed the laptop shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the dark. Julian shrieked, spinning around in his chair. His face was slick with sweat, his eyes wide and bloodshot. He was still in his tuxedo pants, but he'd lost the jacket and the Rolex was gone. What the? Sterling. Blake. How did you? Save the questions, Julian, Victoria said, her voice dangerously calm. She rested a hand on the butt of her gun, though she didn't draw it. The threat was implied. Where's the drive? I don't have it. I gave it to you. He stammered, backing the chair up until it hit the floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, lightning forked over Lake Michigan, illuminating his terrified face. I gave you everything. The texts, the files, I'm not talking about the Apex files. I cut in, stepping into the circle of blue light from the dead laptop. I'm talking about the security keys. The ones that let you into the encrypted municipal servers. The ones tied to the riverfront bond issuances. Marcus didn't have those. Evelyn didn't have those. You didn't have the clearance. So who gave them to you? Julian's eyes darted to the door, then to the balcony. He was looking for exits that weren't there. I don't know what you're talking about. I found a backdoor. A vulnerability. Bullshit, Victoria snapped. She leaned down, getting right in his face. We decrypted your drive, Julian. We saw the metadata. The security tokens you used to access the city comptroller's portal were generated by a Level 4 admin ID. The only people with Level 4 clearance are the mayor, the CFO, and one other person. She paused, letting the name hang in the humid air. Marcus Vance, your dear cousin-in-law. The man who's been feeding you the keys to the kingdom so you could pass them to Blackwood. Julian's face crumpled. The fight drained out of him so fast he looked like he might slide out of the chair and onto the floor. Marcus said it was just a technical assist. He said it was necessary to stabilize the liquidity so the Series B wouldn't fail. He said if the riverfront looked shaky, Blackwood would pull out and we'd all lose our jobs. Marcus lied, I said, grabbing the back of the chair and spinning Julian around to face me. I kept my grip tight, feeling the cheap fabric of his shirt wrinkle under my fingers. Marcus wasn't trying to save the Series B. He was trying to kill it. He's been moving money into his own offshore accounts for 2 years. He needed a liquidity crisis to hide the theft. He used you to cook the books, used Blackwood to create the panic, and then he was going to let Blackwood swallow Apex so he could walk away with the cash while everyone was looking at me. No, Marcus wouldn't, Julian whispered, but there was no conviction in it. He was putting the pieces together himself now, realizing he'd been a pawn in a game he didn't understand. Marcus would, Victoria said coldly. He's been Blackwood's primary asset for 18 months. Longer than you've been sleeping with Evelyn. You were just the distraction. The handsome face to keep Peter busy while Marcus cleaned out the vaults. And when Blackwood was done with you, Marcus was going to let him throw you to the SEC. You were never going to Dubai, Julian. You were going to Leavenworth. Julian let out a choked sob. He looked up at me, tears mixing with the sweat on his cheeks. I didn't want anyone to get hurt, Blake. I swear. I wanted Evelyn to notice me. And Marcus promised me a VP spot at Great Lakes Dominion. He said I'd be set for life. Life in a federal penitentiary, I corrected him. I released the chair, taking a step back. Unless you help us. Unless you give us the full chain of custody. Every email, every encrypted chat, every transaction Marcus routed through your accounts. You do that, and Victoria here makes sure the U.S. attorney knows you cooperated. You don't, and we let Blackwood's cleaners find you. And trust me, Julian, they're already in the building. I saw a guy in a maintenance uniform loitering in the lobby who looked like he could snap you in half. Victoria pulled out her phone, showing him a photo. It was a grainy shot of a bald man in a dark suit standing near the mailboxes downstairs. That's Tommy the Fixer Russo, Blackwood's head of security. He's on his way up right now. You've got 2 minutes to decide if you want to be a witness or a corpse. Julian looked at the phone, then at the darkened hallway leading to the elevator. I could practically see the gears turning in his panicked brain. He was calculating his odds. 2 minutes against a professional killer versus a chance to flip the script. Okay, he whispered, his voice breaking. Okay, I'll talk. But I need immunity. Written. From the U.S. attorney. And I need protection. Today. You'll get it, Victoria said. She didn't smile. She just pulled out a thumb drive and tossed it onto the desk. Everything you need is on here. The encrypted backups of your chats with Marcus. The routing numbers for the Cayman accounts. The digital signatures proving Marcus authorized the transfer of the security keys. It's all time-stamped, geolocated, and verified. It's ironclad. Julian grabbed the drive like it was a lifeline. What about Blackwood? What if he comes after my family? Blackwood's going to be too busy fighting off the SEC and his European investors to worry about your mother in Winnetka, I said. But if it makes you feel better, consider this. If you don't talk, Blackwood wins. He buries Apex, he buries Marcus, and he leaves you holding the bag for the Meridian Tower's collapse. 3 people died in that retrofit, Julian. The feds are looking for someone to hang for that. If it's not you, it's Marcus. And if it's not Marcus, it's Blackwood. Your choice determines who goes to prison for negligent homicide. That did it. Julian's resolve shattered. He started talking, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. He detailed how Marcus had given him a USB drive containing the security tokens 6 months ago, how he'd used them to log into the city's private infrastructure portal, how he'd altered the inspection schedules to delay the riverfront permits, how he'd funneled the resulting penalty fees into a dummy account Marcus controlled. He even admitted to planting the leaks about Apex's cash flow problems with the Chicago Business Journal. Victoria recorded every word on her phone, occasionally prompting him for a date or a name. When he finished, she nodded, slipping the phone back into her clutch. Good. Agent Reyes is outside. She'll take your formal statement and get you into protective custody. And Julian? She paused at the door, looking back at him. Try not to trip on your way to the car. Wouldn't want you to accidentally fall on a knife before you testify. We left him there, slumped in the chair, staring at the darkened window. As we stepped into the hallway, Agent Reyes gave Victoria a thumbs up. 2 other agents moved into the penthouse to secure Julian. He'll hold, Victoria said as we headed back to the elevator. He's got too much to lose now. And Marcus? Marcus is going to have a very bad morning when the U.S. attorney serves those warrants. He's not the only one, I said, hitting the button for the garage. Blackwood's going to know we have Julian. He's going to know we have the keys, which means he's going to accelerate his timeline. He'll try to force the board vote before we can get the evidence in front of the SEC. Then we don't give him the chance, Victoria said. The elevator doors opened. We stepped inside, the cold air of the garage hitting us. We call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow afternoon. 3 p.m. We invite Blackwood personally. We lay it all out. The leaks, the theft, the conspiracy. And then we watch him squirm. I looked at her, seeing the steel beneath the designer gown. You make it sound simple. It is simple, she replied as the elevator hit the ground floor. We have the truth. He has a stack of lies. In Chicago, the truth might not always win, but it sure as hell leaves a bigger crater. And Peter? She looked at me, her gray eyes hard. Tomorrow, you don't just take back your name. You bury his. The elevator doors opened. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The first hints of dawn were staining the sky a sickly gray. But inside, I felt a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The mole was caught. The traitor was exposed. And tomorrow, the mastermind would finally face the music. We walked to the car. Victoria tapped the driver's shoulder. Back to the Drake. We've got a board packet to prepare. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked back at the gleaming tower of Julian's apartment. Somewhere in its belly, a rat was singing. And somewhere else in this city, a man named Adrian Blackwood was about to learn that the house always wins. Especially when the house is named Blake. The mahogany dug into my elbows as I leaned forward, watching the second hand on the boardroom clock tick toward 3. Victoria was 2 seats to my right, tapping through the final slides on her laptop, the blue light from the screen washing out the sharp angles of her face. Arthur Vance sat to my left, his silver hair combed back, his hands folded on the table like he was waiting for a quarterly earnings report he already knew the numbers to. The other 7 board members were scattered around the long table, shifting in their leather chairs, whispering behind their hands. None of them would meet my eye. They were waiting to see which way the wind blew. The door swung open at 3:01. Adrian Blackwood walked in like he owned the place, which, according to the forged proxy votes his team had filed that morning, he almost did. He was wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than most of the staff's annual salaries, his dark hair slicked back, a smirk playing at the corner of his thin mouth. 2 junior associates from his Chicago office flanked him, clutching stacks of legal pads like security blankets. "Didn't think you'd still be here, Blake," Blackwood said, his voice smooth, East Coast elite with a hint of Midwestern condescension. He tossed a manila folder onto the table in front of me. "Thought the divorce would have cleaned you out by noon. Or did Evelyn forget to change the locks on your office?" I didn't pick up the folder. I just looked at him, letting the silence stretch. Victoria stopped tapping her laptop. Arthur cleared his throat, the sound like gravel in a tin can. "Take a seat, Adrian," I said. My voice was steady, the way it got before I closed a 9-figure deal. "We're about to start." Blackwood laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He pulled out the chair at the opposite end of the table, the one that used to belong to Arthur before he'd abdicated it to me this morning. "Start? We're already done. I've got 62% of the outstanding shares represented here via proxy. Your little stunt last night with the mole? Cute. But it won't hold up in court, and it sure as hell won't stop me from voting you out as CEO today. I'll be appointing an interim replacement by 4. Someone competent. Someone who understands that Apex is a sinking ship, and I'm the only life raft in the harbor." "Funny," Victoria said, finally looking up from her screen. Her gray eyes were flat, emotionless. "We ran the proxy votes you filed. 17 of them are from accounts linked to Marcus Vance's offshore shells. Accounts that were frozen by the SEC 40 minutes ago. The other 23? Signed by Evelyn Vance, who forfeited her voting rights as part of the divorce settlement she signed at 7 a.m. this morning. You've got 11%, Adrian. Not 60. And even that's contingent on the board recognizing your emergency petition, which we're not." Blackwood's smirk twitched. He looked at the 2 associates, who were frantically flipping through their legal pads, their faces paling. "This is obstruction," he snapped. "I'll have your licenses for this, Sterling. And you." He jabbed a finger at me. "You'll be lucky if you're selling hot dogs on Navy Pier by next week." "Let's table the threats for a second," I said, tapping the gavel once against the table. The sound cut through the tension like a knife. "We've got a quorum." Official Agenda Item 1. Presentation of findings from the internal investigation into unauthorized data breaches, misappropriation of escrow funds, and collusion with external entities to manipulate Apex's stock price. Victoria? She hit a key on her laptop. The projector on the wall flickered to life, casting Julian Thorne's face onto the screen. He was sitting in a drab interrogation room, wearing an orange jumpsuit, his eyes sunken, his Rolex conspicuously absent. The audio crackled through the speakers. "My name is Julian Thorne. I'm recording this statement voluntarily, without coercion. Between January and October of this year, I provided Adrian Blackwood and his representatives with confidential Apex Architectural Group files, including riverfront development structural schematics, Series B investor lists, and municipal bond application data. The security tokens required to access the City Comptroller's portal were provided to me by Marcus Vance, Apex's former CFO. Mr. Blackwood instructed me to alter the riverfront inspection schedules to delay permit issuance, triggering $4.2 million in penalty fees that were diverted to accounts controlled by Mr. Blackwood. I also confirmed that Mr. Blackwood authorized the use of substandard concrete in the Meridian Towers retrofit in 2022, resulting in the structural failure that killed 3 workers. I make this statement in exchange for a cooperation agreement with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Julian's face froze on the screen, his mouth slightly open, his eyes pleading. The boardroom was dead silent. You could hear the hum of the projector, the tick of the clock, the shallow breathing of Blackwood's associates. Blackwood slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing off the walls. Deepfake. That's a goddamn deepfake. I've never met this kid. It's not a deepfake, Adrian, Arthur said, his voice a low rumble. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope, tossing it onto the table. That's Julian's handwriting on the physical confession he signed this morning. Matches the samples from his employment file. The timestamps on the video are verified by the FBI's field office. And the security tokens he mentioned? We traced them back to Marcus's personal server. The one he kept in his summer home in Door County. The one the FBI seized at 6 a.m. today. He paused, looking at Blackwood like he was a bug on a windshield. Marcus is currently in a holding cell at the Dirksen Federal Building. He's already pled guilty to wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. He named you as the ringleader before his lawyer could even finish his coffee. Oh, and the Meridian Towers thing? We've got the purchase orders for the substandard concrete, signed by your procurement manager in Detroit, paid for with a Blackwood Capital corporate card. Blackwood's face had gone from pale to splotchy red. He was breathing hard, his fingers digging into the arms of his chair. This is a witch hunt, he hissed. You're all in on this. The Blakes, the Van Cess, Sterling, you're a cartel. You're trying to crush legitimate competition because you're scared of progress. Legitimate competition doesn't involve bribing city controllers. Adrian, Victoria cut in. She pulled up another slide. A series of bank transfer records, highlighted in yellow. We've got $12.7 million in payments from your private foundation to Daniel Fitzpatrick's offshore account. Fitzpatrick's already resigned as city comptroller. He's cooperating too. And here, she flipped to another slide. A string of encrypted text messages. These are the chats between you and Marcus, discussing how to slow walk the riverfront bond issuances to create a liquidity event that would force Peter to accept your buyout offer. The metadata has been authenticated by 3 separate forensic firms. You want to keep claiming this as a setup? Go ahead. The SEC's already reviewing the files. Blackwood stood up so fast his chair toppled backward, clattering against the floor. I'm done with this farce. My lawyers will be in touch. And when I'm done with you, Blake, you'll be begging for a job cleaning the toilets in my Detroit office. Sit down, Adrian, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I just pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and turned the screen toward him. Read that. He hesitated, then leaned forward, his eyes scanning the email on my screen. It was from the managing partner at Lombard Odier, one of Blackwood's 3 largest European investors. The subject line was stark: termination of investment commitments. Dear Mr. Blackwood, following the dissemination of evidence linking your firm to ongoing federal investigations into securities fraud and bribery in the United States, Lombard Odier, along with Pictet Group and UBS Global Wealth Management, hereby terminate all outstanding investment commitments totaling 4.8 billion euros, effective immediately. We will also be initiating a review of your firm's compliance with EU anti-money laundering regulations, which may result in further sanctions. Regards, Jean-Luc Moreau, Managing Partner, Lombard Odier. Blackwood's hand started shaking. He reached for the phone, but I pulled it back. Sent that 30 minutes ago, I said, along with the full evidentiary package. Your European backers aren't interested in propping up a criminal enterprise, Adrian. Neither are your U.S. lenders. Chase called me an hour ago. They're freezing your credit lines by close of business. Your hedge fund's down 19% in pre-market trading. By the time the bell rings at 4, you'll be lucky if you can cover payroll for your receptionist. You can't, he stammered, his earlier arrogance evaporating like gasoline on hot asphalt. This is defamation. I'll sue you into the ground. The boardroom door opened again. 2 FBI agents in dark suits stepped in, their badges clipped to their belts. The taller one, a woman with a buzz cut and a no-nonsense expression, nodded at Victoria. Mr. Blackwood? I'm Special Agent Ramirez. We need you to come with us. We have some questions about the Meridian Towers investigation, and the U.S. Attorney would like to discuss a material witness warrant. Blackwood stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You can't arrest me. I'm a prominent businessman. I have rights. My lawyers. Your lawyers are currently in a conference room downstairs, explaining to the SEC why they didn't disclose Marcus Vance's offshore holdings, Agent Ramirez said. She stepped forward, her hand resting lightly on the handcuffs at her belt. You can come voluntarily, or we can do this the hard way. Either way, you're leaving this building today. Choice is yours. Blackwood looked around the table. None of the board members would meet his eye. Arthur was staring at him with a mixture of disgust and pity. Victoria was already closing her laptop, her expression bored. I just sat there, watching him, the same way I'd watched Julian in that airport lounge. The same way I'd watched Evelyn crumble last night. He slumped back into his chair, his shoulders shaking. For a second, I thought he might cry. Then he stood up, smoothing his suit jacket with trembling hands, and followed the agents out of the room without another word. The door clicked shut behind him, and the tension in the room drained out like air from a punctured tire. Old Man Henderson, the board member who'd choked on caviar at the Drake last night, let out a low whistle. Well, I'll be damned. The kid actually pulled it off. Arthur stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. He looked at me, his craggy face softening just a fraction. Meeting adjourned. Apex's leadership remains unchanged. The CFO position will be filled internally pending a full audit. Any objections? He scanned the table. No one spoke. Good. Peter, Victoria, my office. We need to discuss the press release. We followed him down the hall to his private suite, the leather soles of our shoes clicking against the marble floor. Once the door was shut, Arthur poured 3 fingers of scotch into tumblers, handing them to us without asking. Margaret would have been proud, he said, sinking into his leather chair. She always said you had a spine, even when you were 6, and tried to fight the kid who stole your lunch money. I thought I was doing right by her, marrying you to Evelyn. I was wrong. I let my pride get in the way of my debt. We all made mistakes, I said, taking a sip of the scotch. It burned going down, but it felt good. Evelyn, Marcus, Julian, even me, for not seeing the cracks sooner. Cracks are easy to miss when you're busy building, Victoria said. She was leaning against the windowsill, her empty tumbler dangling from her fingers. But we've got the foundation back now. The Series B closes Monday. The SEC's investigation into Apex is officially closed. They're focusing on Blackwood and Marcus now. Evelyn signed the divorce papers this morning. She gets the penthouse, the cars, and a monthly stipend that'll keep her in shoes, but she forfeits all claims to Apex stock. Arthur's already moved to freeze her trust fund access until the civil suits against Marcus are settled. And Blackwood? I asked. Toasted, Victoria said, a rare smile tugging at her lips. His fund's down 34% as of 5 minutes ago. Lombard Odier's statement hit the wires 5 minutes after you sent that email. His European investors are pulling out en masse. The SEC's filing criminal charges by end of day. He'll be out on bail by tomorrow, but his career's done. No one in finance will touch him with a 10-foot pole. He'll spend the next 5 years fighting indictments, and when he's done, he'll be broke and forgotten. Arthur nodded. Good. Let him twist. The Vance name stays clean. Margaret's sacrifice stays between us. And Peter? He looked at me, his eyes sharp. Apex is yours. Fully. No strings. I'll step down from the board at the end of the quarter. You run it the way you want. Just don't let it turn you into the kind of man who forgets where he came from. I won't, I said. I meant it. The hunger that had driven me for 20 years to prove myself to Arthur, to Evelyn, to the Chicago elite, had burned out. In its place was something quieter, steadier. A need to build something that lasted, not because it made me rich, but because it was good. Victoria pushed off the windowsill. I've got a call with the Journal in 10 minutes. I'll handle the press. You two, she gestured between me and Arthur, figure out the transition. And Peter? Your mother called. She wants you home for dinner. Said if you're late, she's giving your pot roast to the neighbor's dog. Arthur chuckled, a rare sound. Go. Margaret's been waiting long enough. I'll handle the board. I shook his hand, a firm, brief grip. No words needed. Then I headed for the elevator, my phone buzzing in my pocket. It was a text from my mother. Roast done. Potatoes are crispy. Don't stop for anything. Not even a celebration. I smiled, texting back a quick on my way, and stepped out into the late afternoon sun. The wind off the lake was cold, but it smelled like rain and diesel and the faint, sweet scent of the rose bushes my mother planted along the fence of her little brick house in Bridgeport. I drove slow, past the Drake, past the Apex headquarters, past the gold-plated towers of the Gold Coast, until the streets narrowed and the houses got smaller and the kids were riding bikes on the sidewalk instead of nannies pushing strollers. Her house was exactly as I remembered it. Peeling white paint on the trim, a rusted mailbox with her name stenciled on the side, the rose bushes blooming purple and pink along the fence. The front door was unlocked, like it always was. I pushed it open, and the smell hit me first: roast beef, garlic, potatoes caramelized in pan drippings. My stomach growled so loud I thought it might shake the walls. My mother was in the kitchen, wearing a faded blue apron over a floral dress, her gray hair pulled back in a bun. She didn't look up from the pot she was stirring. "Took you long enough. I was about to send out a search party." "Traffic was bad," I said, shrugging off my suit jacket. It felt heavy, like I was shedding a second skin. "Board meeting ran late." She turned around, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes scanned me, taking in the circles under my eyes, the stubble on my jaw, the way my shoulders slumped with exhaustion. "You look like hell. Go wash your hands. Dinner's on the table in 5. I did as I was told, scrubbing my hands with the lemon-scented soap she'd used since I was a kid. When I came back, she'd set 2 plates at the small kitchen table. Chipped ceramic, the same ones we'd used for 20 years. No fancy china. No crystal glasses. Just iced tea and pot roast and a bowl of green beans from her garden. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The roast was perfect, tender, juicy, the potatoes crispy, just the way I liked them. Finally, my mother spoke. "Arthur called. Said you did good today. Said you fixed what Evelyn broke." "We fixed it," I said. "Victoria did most of the heavy lifting. And Julian, he talked. Gave us everything we needed." "Julian's a fool," she said, slicing a green bean in half with her fork. "Evelyn's a fool. Marcus too. Fools think power comes from hurting people. Smart people know it comes from not needing to." She looked up at me, her brown eyes sharp and clear. "You didn't need to destroy Blackwood to win, Peter. You just needed to tell the truth. That's all your old man ever did. Told the truth, worked hard, came home to dinner. He'd be proud of you." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat sudden and unexpected. "I miss him," I said quietly. "I do too." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Her palm was rough, calloused from years of cleaning offices and folding laundry, but it was warm. Steady. "But he's here. In the roast. In the roses. In the way you don't back down when someone tries to push you around. He never left, Peter. Neither did I." We finished dinner in silence. Afterward, I helped her wash the dishes, the warm water stinging my scraped knuckles, left over from when I'd punched the wall in my office last week before all this started. She didn't ask about the bruise. She just handed me a dish towel and told me not to drip on the floor. Later, we sat on the front porch, sharing a mug of her weak coffee, watching the streetlights flicker on. A group of kids rode by on bikes, shouting to each other, their laughter echoing down the block. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. The roses smelled stronger in the cooling air. "You staying tonight?" my mother asked, rocking slowly in her wicker chair. "Yeah," I said. "Got nowhere else to be." "Good." She sipped her coffee, her eyes on the darkening sky. "Your room's still made up. Sheets are clean. And Peter?" She looked at me, her face soft in the fading light. "You don't need a penthouse to be somebody. You just need a place where the door's always unlocked. And a reason to come home." I nodded, leaning back against the peeling paint of the porch railing. The wind off the lake was colder now, but I didn't mind. For the first time in years, I felt warm. Whole. The battles were over, the boardroom fights, the betrayals, the constant need to prove I belonged. I'd won, not because I'd beaten Blackwood, or taken back Apex, or silenced Evelyn. I'd won because I'd come home. Because the people who mattered most were still here. Because the price of retribution wasn't my soul, or my mother's sacrifice, or my peace of mind. It was just this: a plate of pot roast, a chipped coffee mug, and the quiet knowledge that no matter how high I climbed, this was where I'd always land. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, probably Blackwood's motorcade, heading downtown to face the music. I didn't flinch. I just took another sip of coffee, listening to my mother hum an old jazz tune under her breath, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. I was home, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough.